When I woke up in the hospital with tubes in my arm and my mother sobbing by my bed, the first thing I asked was, "What happened to me?" She only whispered, "You fainted again, sweetheart. You're not well." But I didn't faint. I remember everything. And if I'm right, someone wanted me to believe I'm sick, when I'm not. Before everything unraveled, I thought my life was simple, quiet, stable. My name's Elena Morris, 28, living in a small coastal town called Wintermere, known for its sleepy streets and sea air that smelled like salt and rust. I worked as an illustrator for a local publishing house, the kind of job where people assumed you lived in a cozy world full of watercolor dreams and coffee shop musings. In some ways, they were right. I lived in a small apartment above a bakery. My mornings were routine: toast, coffee, a quick sketch before work. My boyfriend, Marcus, often teased that I lived like an old soul. He was everything I wasn't: charming, outgoing, magnetic. A marketing consultant who could talk anyone into anything. When we met at a local art fair, he said, "You're the first person who makes silence look loud." I should have taken that as a warning, but at the time, it sounded like poetry. For 2 years, things seemed perfect. Marcus and I spent weekends cooking together, laughing over burned pasta or midnight walks along the pier. He said he loved how fragile but determined I looked when I drew. I used to think that was romantic. Now it sounds like a diagnosis. Then came the headaches. They started as dull pressure behind my eyes, the kind that made light feel like knives. I blamed the long hours at my desk, the stress of deadlines, even the glare from my tablet. But Marcus became oddly fixated on them. "You push yourself too hard," he'd say, bringing me tea and insisting I rest. At first, his concern felt sweet. Then it started to feel watchful. When I forgot to text him after work, he'd show up at my door, worried. If I looked tired, he'd insist on taking my temperature. Once, he even called my boss to say I was unwell, without asking me. I laughed it off to my coworker, Jade, who frowned and said, "Elena, that's not cute. That's control." I brushed her off. Marcus was just caring, I told myself. After all, my mother had always said I was delicate. Maybe people saw something in me I couldn't. Then the fainting spells began. At least, that's what Marcus called them. The first time, I simply stood up from my chair and blacked out. When I came to, Marcus was kneeling beside me with his phone in hand, calling an ambulance. At the hospital, the doctors ran tests: blood work, scans, neurological exams. All normal. Marcus, however, wasn't satisfied. "Something's wrong," he told the doctor. "She's pale, dizzy, anxious. Maybe her blood sugar, or her thyroid." They nodded politely, but I saw the subtle exchange of glances, the ones people give when they suspect overreaction. When I got home, Marcus had already filled the kitchen counter with supplements, herbal teas, and medical printouts. "I did some research," he said. "You might have a mild autoimmune condition. It's tricky to detect." I tried to protest, but he'd already arranged appointments: specialists, nutritionists, even a psychiatrist, just in case it's stress-related. And somehow, I let him. Because it was easier than fighting. Every week brought a new diagnosis, a new explanation. Fatigue, anemia, hormonal imbalance, anxiety disorder. Each one came with pills I didn't remember agreeing to take. Marcus kept them organized in a white pillbox labeled Elena's Care. "You forget sometimes," he said with a smile. "I just want to help." Then came the night that changed everything. I was sketching at my desk when the dizziness hit again, a sudden, suffocating fog. My hands went numb, my vision tunneled, and I heard Marcus's voice calling my name from the kitchen. The next thing I knew, I was on the floor. When I opened my eyes, bright hospital lights blurred above me. My mother sat in the corner, pale and shaking. "Elena, thank God," she whispered. "Marcus said you collapsed. They think it's your heart." But the doctor didn't say that. He said my vitals were stable. No arrhythmia, no electrolyte imbalance, no sign of illness. And yet, Marcus hovered at my bedside, gripping my hand and murmuring, "You're not out of the woods yet, baby. We'll figure this out." Something in his tone made my skin crawl. The next morning, when the nurse came to draw blood, I asked what medications I'd been given overnight. She checked the chart. "Just fluids," she said. "And the sedative your partner provided, he said it was prescribed." My heart stopped. I hadn't been prescribed anything. That's when I knew. Whatever was happening to me, it wasn't illness. It was manipulation. And the person I trusted most was the one making me sick. When I got home from the hospital, Marcus had already turned the apartment into a recovery ward. The lights were dimmed, a faint scent of eucalyptus hung in the air, and the coffee table was lined with vitamin bottles, all labeled with my name in neat black marker. "Doctor's orders," he said, handing me a cup of herbal tea that tasted faintly metallic. "You need rest, no stress, no work." I nodded numbly, still shaken by what the nurse had told me, the mention of a sedative my partner provided. I wanted to confront him right then, to demand answers. But the moment I opened my mouth, he looked at me with that soft, pitying smile, the kind people reserve for fragile things they're afraid to break. "Sweetheart," he murmured, touching my cheek, "you've been through so much. Don't question everything. Just trust me." Those words stuck in my throat like glass. For the next few days, I did as he asked. I rested. I drank his teas. I took the pills he placed on the counter. But something felt wrong. My head buzzed constantly, and I woke up each morning groggy, disoriented, like I'd lost entire hours of my life. When I checked the clock one morning, it read 11:46 a.m. I never slept that late. Ever. My art deadlines were piling up, emails unanswered. Marcus had even called my boss again, telling him I needed a few weeks off. When I tried to open my laptop, the password didn't work. "Marcus," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "did you change my password?" He didn't look up from his phone. "You were spending too much time online. Stress isn't good for your condition." My condition? You don't even know what that is. He finally looked at me, calm, expressionless. "The doctors said you need rest. I'm just helping you. You can't always see what's best for you when you're unwell." There it was again, that quiet gaslighting wrapped in concern. The first time he said it, I brushed it off as care. The second time, it made my stomach twist. I went to Jade's apartment that evening. She opened the door before I even knocked fully, taking one look at my pale face. "Jesus, Elena, what's going on? You look like you've been sleepwalking for days." "I think Marcus is giving me something," I whispered. "He says it's herbal, but I feel foggy, like my brain's underwater." Jade grabbed her coat. "We're taking those pills to a lab. Now." We packed a few from each bottle into a bag and drove to a nearby independent pharmacy. The technician took one look at the capsules and frowned. "You sure these are supplements? Because some of these markings look pharmaceutical." My heart pounded. "What do you mean?" "I can't tell without testing," she said, "but some of these aren't standard vitamins. Come back tomorrow." Jade insisted I stay with her that night, but I refused. If I disappear even for one night, Marcus will go crazy. I'll go home, act normal, and come back tomorrow. That was my mistake. When I returned, Marcus was sitting on the couch, a half-finished glass of wine beside him. The moment he saw me, his expression hardened. "Where were you?" "Just with Jade. I needed some air." He stood slowly, crossing the room in deliberate steps. "You could have told me. I was worried." Worried or checking my location every 5 minutes? **T back before I could stop myself. The air shifted. He exhaled through his nose, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You sound paranoid, love. Are you sure you remembered to take your evening dose?" The way he said dose made me shiver. That night, I pretended to swallow the pills, tucking them under my tongue until he turned away. When he left for a phone call, I spit them into a tissue and flushed them down the sink. For the first time in weeks, I slept deeply, dreamless and calm. The next morning, the pharmacy called. "Ms. Morris, we ran the tests. Some of the pills contain trace sedatives, benzodiazepines. Do you have a prescription for those?" My hands trembled. "No, I don't. You need to be careful. Those can cause dependence, or worse, fainting if combined with alcohol or certain herbs." The call ended, and I just sat there, staring at the white pillbox on my counter. The one labeled Elena's Cared. I wanted to scream. To confront him. To tell the police. But something stopped me. Fear, confusion, maybe disbelief. Because if Marcus really was Dr*gang me, why? What could he possibly gain? I spent that day pretending nothing was wrong. Smiling, making small talk, sketching half-heartedly while Marcus hovered. But inside, something inside me cracked open. The first real fracture in my trust. That evening, when he handed me my tea, I caught his eyes lingering. Too long, too calm. I set the cup down untouched. "You know, I don't feel sick anymore," I said quietly. He smiled faintly. "That's good. It means the treatment's working." But I knew better now. That wasn't care. That was control disguised as compassion. And I had just taken my first step into a lie that could cost me my freedom, or worse. For the next few days, I played the role of the grateful patient. I smiled when Marcus handed me my pills, nodded when he told me to rest, and thanked him for being so caring. But behind that performance, I was memorizing everything, what he gave me, when he gave it, how much. At first, I wrote it down in a small notebook. But when I came home one evening to find my drawers slightly ajar and the notebook gone, I switched to hiding notes in my sketchbooks, between pages filled with watercolor flowers and landscapes. He never touched my art. It was the one place he respected, or maybe just ignored. That small victory gave me courage. Jade texted me every morning to check in, but the messages stopped arriving a week later. I assumed she was busy, until I met her by accident outside the grocery store. Elena, she said, frowning, why haven't you answered my messages? I haven't gotten any, I said. Her expression hardened. Marcus told me you blocked me. He said the stress was making you paranoid. My stomach dropped. That's not true. I figured, she said, glancing around. Look, I don't know what's going on, but if you need help. Before she could finish, Marcus appeared from nowhere, a plastic bag in his hand and a smile too wide to be real. There you are, babe. I was wondering where you ran off to. Jade's eyes widened. You're unbelievable. She turned to me. Elena, please call me when you're alone. Marcus waited until she walked away before lowering his voice. You can't keep letting her fill your head with nonsense. She's toxic. She doesn't understand your health. My health. I repeated. Or your control? He stared at me for a long, cold moment, then smiled faintly. You need to take your medication. You're slipping again. That night, I didn't sleep. Every noise sounded like footsteps. Every shadow looked like him. I sat by the window until dawn, watching the ocean waves crash in the distance. In the morning, my mother called. Elena, honey, Marcus told me you've been confused lately. Maybe I should come stay with you. Confused. The word stung. Mom, I'm fine. Please don't listen to him. She hesitated. Sweetheart, he says you've been missing appointments, forgetting things. He's worried you might hurt yourself. My breath caught. What? That's insane. I would never. Elena, she interrupted gently, you've always been fragile. Maybe he's right to look out for you. It was like the air left the room. He'd turned her too. That afternoon, when Marcus went out to pick up groceries, I tore through the apartment searching for my notebook, the one that disappeared. I found it tucked behind the bookshelf, half burned. The last page was scorched, but I could still read one line I'd written. He's mixing something into my tea. I froze. That night, when he handed me the mug, I smiled sweetly. Will you have some too? He hesitated, just for a second, then said, It's your blend. You need it more than I do. The lie was too smooth, too easy. When he went to bed, I poured the tea down the sink. The next morning, he commented casually, You slept poorly again. Did you finish your tea last night? No, I said, testing him. His expression barely changed, but I saw the flicker, a split second of irritation before the mask returned. That's when I knew I had to get out. I called Jade from a payphone near the pier. I think he's gang me, I whispered. He's tracking my phone, reading my emails. I need to leave, but I can't do it alone. Come to my place tonight, she said. We'll pack your things and go. But when I returned to the apartment, Marcus was waiting by the window. He smiled. You've been busy. My blood ran cold. What do you mean? Someone called while you were out. A pharmacy, I think. They said you'd left a prescription inquiry. Funny, since you told me you didn't have one. He took a slow step forward. Are you lying to me, Elena? I forced a laugh. Of course not. You probably misheard. But his eyes told me he didn't believe it. The rest of the evening, he didn't speak. He just watched me, silent, methodical, every move calculated. When I went to the bathroom, I could hear him standing outside the door. By midnight, I couldn't take it anymore. I texted Jade one word, now. She replied instantly, on my way. But before I could grab my coat, Marcus appeared in the doorway, holding my phone. Looking for this? I froze. He held it up between two fingers, his expression unreadable. I told you stress makes you forget things. Maybe we should visit Dr. Serrano again. He can adjust your medication. I wanted to scream, to tell him I knew. But all I could do was nod. Good girl, he whispered, tucking the phone into his pocket. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the sound of the waves muffled beneath the wind. Every muscle in my body screamed to run, but I knew if I tried now, he'd find me. So I waited. And planned. Because the next move I made had to count. And if I misstepped, even once, I knew I'd never walk out of that apartment alive. I don't remember the exact moment I stopped being afraid of Marcus and started studying him instead. It happened quietly, sometime between the third sleepless night and the first time I caught him rifling through my purse while pretending to tidy the living room. He didn't know I was awake then. I watched through the crack of the bedroom door as he opened my wallet, taking out my driver's license and snapping a photo with his phone. When he left, I waited 10 full minutes before breathing again. The next morning, I noticed my insurance card was missing. That's when I started documenting everything. I hid an old phone Jade had given me, one Marcus didn't know about, behind a loose tile under the bathroom sink. Each night when he fell asleep, I'd record short voice memos, describing everything. What I ate, what pills he gave me, any appointments he scheduled. It wasn't much, but it was proof. 2 days later, I found my first real piece of evidence. While Marcus showered, his phone buzzed on the counter. Normally, I wouldn't dare touch it, but something about the contact name, Dr. Serrano, private line, made me pause. I opened the message thread. My stomach turned. Marcus, use her maiden name on the file. Don't let her mother access the full record. Unknown. Understood. Transfer cleared. I'll update the chart today. Transfer. Chart. File. I took *TS and sent them to Jade's email, attaching a short note. If something happens to me, show this to the police. That night, I searched online for Dr. Serrano, Wintermere Clinic. There was no listing. Instead, the only result that matched the name was a veterinarian. I felt sick. The next morning, I confronted Marcus, carefully, cautiously. Hey, I said over breakfast, what's Dr. Serrano's first name again? I wanted to send a thank you card. He didn't even look up from his phone. You don't need to. He prefers privacy. Where's his clinic? Out of town. You wouldn't know it. Right, I said softly. Because it doesn't exist. He froze. Just for a heartbeat. Then he smiled. You're still not sleeping well, are you? I'll call him today. Maybe we should increase your dosage. I forced a shaky laugh. Maybe. But inside, I was already planning my next move. That evening, while Marcus was out running errands, I found a folder in his desk drawer labeled medical records. My name was on every page, but the details were wrong. Diagnoses I'd never received, medications I'd never taken, even a psychological evaluation claiming I was displaying signs of delusional paranoia. And the signature at the bottom? Dr. Serrano. The same non-existent doctor. I scanned every page with my hidden phone, trembling so hard the images came out blurred. On one document, I spotted something even worse, a consent form, signed in my handwriting, authorizing Marcus as my primary medical proxy in the event of hospitalization. Except I'd never signed anything like that. The signature looked similar, but the loop in the E was wrong. He'd forged it. He had total control of my medical identity, and the paper trail to back it up. I barely had time to hide the documents before the door opened. Marcus stepped inside, holding takeout bags and smiling like nothing was wrong. Long day? He asked, kissing my forehead. Yeah, I said, forcing my voice steady. Just tired. He unpacked the food and poured 2 glasses of wine. I didn't touch mine. While he talked about the neighbors and the weather, I stared at his face, wondering how long he'd been planning this, how far he'd go. That night, I sent the scanned files to Jade again, then deleted the copies from my phone. The next morning, she called, whispering, Elena, this is insane. These are criminal documents. He's trying to establish medical control, probably financial too. You need to get out. I know, I said, pacing the living room. But if I disappear, he'll report me missing or unstable. Those fake files make it look like I'm delusional. What if you go to your mom? She believes him. There was silence, then Jade said, Okay, I have a friend, a journalist. She handles cases like this. Let me reach out. But I never got to find out who that friend was. That evening when I came home, Marcus was waiting again, calm, polite, terrifyingly composed. I spoke to your mother today, he said. She's worried. She thinks you've stopped taking your medication. My pulse spiked. I told you I'm not. He cut me off gently. Sure. Don't make this harder than it has to be. You need professional supervision. Dr. Serrano agrees. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a white envelope. Inside was a printed form, a psychiatric intake referral. Wintermere Mental Wellness Center. My name was already on it. I scheduled an appointment, he said, setting it on the table. Tomorrow morning. You'll thank me later. My mouth went dry. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I sat by the window with the fake referral in my hand, my mind spinning. He was going to have me committed. That was his endgame. Once I was labeled unstable, no one would believe me. Not Jade, not my mother, not the police. At 3 a.m., I packed a small bag, just cash, clothes, the backup phone, and the USB with copies of his forged documents. But as I reached for the door, I froze. Marcus was standing in the hallway, silent, half hidden in the dark. Going somewhere? He asked softly. I didn't answer. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. He smiled faintly, tilting his head. You really shouldn't go out alone, Elena. It's not safe when you're unwell. The way he said it made my skin crawl. I stepped back slowly, clutching my bag. Don't do this, I whispered. You don't get to decide what's real for me. He laughed. Quiet, cold, certain. But I already have. I barely slept that night. Every sound felt amplified. The creak of floorboards, the hum of the refrigerator, the faint rustle of wind against the windowpane. Marcus didn't go back to bed after our confrontation. He sat in the living room, lights off, pretending to read. Every few minutes, I could feel his eyes on the hallway, waiting for me to move. By sunrise, I'd made my decision. If he wanted to make me look insane, I'd let him, just long enough to catch him in his own lie. When he handed me the referral form again over breakfast, I smiled weakly. "You're right," I said softly. "Maybe I do need help." He froze for a split second, surprised. Then he smiled, that smooth, rehearsed expression that made my stomach twist. "That's my girl," he said, squeezing my hand. "I'll drive you tomorrow." "Of course," I said, but I had no intention of showing up at any clinic. That afternoon, while he went to pick up groceries, I texted Jade from my backup phone. "I have a plan. Need your friend's contact. Urgent." She replied in seconds. Her name's Naomi, investigative reporter. "I'm looping her in now." Naomi texted me an hour later. Her message was short and careful. "Use this encrypted app. Don't say names. Just send files." I followed her instructions, uploading everything, *TS, forged medical forms, messages with a fake doctor, even recordings of Marcus's concerned voice as he gaslit me. When I finished, Naomi sent one final message. "You're in danger. Don't confront him again. We'll go public, but you need to be safe first." Safe. The word felt foreign. When Marcus came home that evening, I was sitting at the kitchen table, sketching absent-mindedly. He leaned over my shoulder and kissed my hair. "You look better today." "I feel better," I lied. He poured 2 glasses of wine and slid one toward me. "I didn't touch it. Tomorrow will be a big day," he said. "I called the clinic. They're expecting us at 9. They'll do an evaluation and then what?" I asked quietly. He looked up, feigning confusion. "Then you'll get the treatment you need." "And after that?" He smiled faintly. "You'll finally rest." That phrase, "finally rest," chilled me. I knew then that whatever he had planned for tomorrow wasn't therapy. It was erasure. That night, while he showered, I slipped outside barefoot, clutching my phone and USB. The air was cold, slicing through my lungs. I met Jade 2 blocks away, waiting in her car with the engine running. "Get in," she whispered. We drove through the fog in silence. My hands trembled as I held the USB drive. "Naomi's releasing everything," I said. "She said it could take a few hours to verify." Jade nodded. "You'll stay at my place until then. No phone, no calls." But when we reached her apartment, the front door was slightly ajar. My blood ran cold. "Jade," I whispered. She motioned for me to stay back and pushed the door open. Inside, everything looked normal, except for the faint smell of cologne. Marcus's cologne. On the counter sat a small, folded note. 2 words in neat handwriting. "Go home." I backed away, heart pounding. "He knows," I said. "He's watching us." Jade grabbed my arm. "Then we don't go home. We go to the police." But the police didn't believe stories like mine, not without evidence already made public. Naomi's message replayed in my mind. "You need to be safe first." So instead, we drove to Naomi's office, a small newspaper building in downtown Windermere that smelled like old paper and burnt coffee. She looked exactly how I imagined her. Sharp eyes, tired smile, hands that moved fast. She motioned us inside. "I've seen everything you sent," she said, sliding her laptop toward me. "You were right. He forged the doctor, the documents, everything. But he's not just gaslighting you. He's been claiming your medical expenses through false insurance forms in your name." I blinked. "He's stealing from me?" Naomi nodded grimly. "Over $40,000 worth. He's probably planning to frame you as mentally unfit, then access your savings. It's a textbook coercive control case and financial fraud." Jade swore under her breath. "We need to expose him." Naomi's fingers flew over her keyboard. "We will. I'm publishing at midnight. But you can't go anywhere near him until then. If he realizes what's coming, he could destroy the remaining evidence, or worse." I stayed with Jade that night, my nerves *T. Every sound outside made me flinch. I couldn't shake the image of Marcus's calm eyes, his quiet voice whispering, "You'll finally rest." At 11:58 p.m., Naomi texted, "Stories live." I opened the link with shaking hands. The headline read, "Local consultant fabricates medical records to control partner, fake doctor, forged diagnosis exposed." Within minutes, it spread across social media. The comments flooded in. People were furious. Survivors shared similar stories. And for the first time in months, I felt something that almost resembled hope. But that hope didn't last. At 2:13 a.m., my phone buzzed with an unknown number. "Marcus, you think you've won? You don't understand what you've started." Then another message followed. A photo. My mother, asleep in her armchair. "Marcus, You should have listened, Elena. Now it's not just you who needs care. The world went still. Jade saw my face and grabbed my shoulder. What's wrong? I showed her the message, my hands shaking. He's at my mother's house, I whispered. He knows I talked. Jade stood. Then we end this tonight. Call Naomi, tell her to alert the police. Now. As I fumbled for my phone, another text appeared. Marcus, come alone if you want her alive. The drive to my mother's house felt endless. Fog swallowed the road, and every mile felt like a countdown. Jade wanted to come, but Marcus's message was clear. Come alone. I promised I would, but as soon as I turned the corner, I saw her car following at a distance, headlights dimmed. She didn't trust me to face him alone. I didn't trust myself either. The old Morris family house sat on the edge of Wintermere Woods, where the sea wind howled through the pines. My mother's lights were still on, a faint glow behind lace curtains. The front door was ajar. I parked down the street and took a deep breath. My hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped my phone. Naomi had already alerted the police, but she warned me they might take time to respond. Record everything, she'd said. No heroics, just proof. As I stepped onto the porch, the world fell silent. Not even the wind moved. Mom, I whispered. No answer. Inside, the living room smelled like her lavender candles. The TV was still playing softly, showing the late-night news. Marcus's face flashed briefly across the screen, beside the headline Naomi had written. For a second, I thought maybe he'd fled. Maybe he was gone. Then I heard a soft creak behind me. Finally, he said. I turned. Marcus stood in the doorway to the kitchen, half in shadow, half illuminated by the flickering TV. He looked almost serene, like this was just another evening conversation. You shouldn't have come, he said calmly. I was trying to protect you. By gang me? By lying to my mother? By stealing from me? He sighed, as if I were the one being unreasonable. You don't understand, Elena. You were falling apart. Someone had to take care of you. You needed structure, control. Control. My voice broke. You tried to have me institutionalized. He tilted his head. You would have been safe there. Peaceful. You think the world would have believed you, after everything I documented? The doctors, the records. I built proof. Elena. Proof that you're unwell. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder, the same forged medical file. He tossed it onto the coffee table like a magician revealing his trick. See? You signed everything. You always did. I didn't sign a thing, I said. And the world knows it now. Naomi published everything. For the first time, his expression cracked. Just a flicker, anger, disbelief. You think anyone will believe some clickbait journalist over me? Over you, the unstable girlfriend. He took a slow step forward. I backed away, feeling the corner of the wall press against my spine. Where's my mother? I asked. He smiled faintly. Sleeping. Peacefully. I didn't hurt her. I'm not a monster. But his tone made my stomach turn. I needed to see her. I needed proof. When I tried to move past him, he grabbed my wrist. Don't, he whispered. I can still fix this. We can tell them it was all a misunderstanding. Stress, trauma, exhaustion. You'll stay home, and I'll take care of you. Like always. That single word, always, snapped something inside me. I yanked my arm free. You don't get to take care of me ever again. His smile vanished. You really think you can destroy me? I don't need to, I said, stepping back toward the coffee table. You did that yourself. He followed my eyes, to the phone on the table, its screen glowing faintly. You're recording me, he said quietly. I met his gaze. I've been recording you for weeks. For a second, he froze. Then the calm mask shattered. He lunged. I stumbled backward, knocking over a lamp as glass shattered across the floor. He grabbed my shoulders, shoving me against the wall, his breath hot against my ear. You think this makes you safe? You think anyone cares? You're still sick, Elena. They'll always think you're sick. Maybe, I gasped. But at least now they'll see who made me that way. Behind him, a shadow moved. Jade. She stepped silently from the hallway, a metal candlestick in her hand. The instant Marcus turned his head, she swung. The blow wasn't hard enough to knock him out, but it staggered him long enough for me to run. I bolted toward the hallway, shouting, Mom, wake up! I found her in the guest room, slumped but breathing, an empty wine glass beside her. I shook her shoulder. Mom, it's okay. You're safe. Behind me, Marcus roared, You can't run from me. Jade grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the front door. The police are coming. Naomi sent them our location. Marcus reached us just as we stepped onto the porch. The blue and red lights of a police cruiser flashed down the street. He froze, chest heaving, eyes darting wildly. "You set me up," he whispered. I straightened. "No, Marcus. You set yourself up the moment you decided to make me your patient." The officers rushed up the walkway, shouting commands. Marcus raised his hands slowly, smiling one last time, that same calm, eerie smile he always wore. As they cuffed him, he looked at me and said softly, "You'll miss me when you realize you can't function without me." I met his gaze. "I already can." They took him away while the lights flashed across the yard, painting the house in chaos and color. My mother stirred weakly behind me, whispering, "What happened?" "Nothing," I said, my voice shaking with relief. "It's over." But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Not yet. Not until the truth reached everyone who'd believed his lies. That night, I gave my final statement to the police. Jade stayed by my side through every word, and Naomi arrived just before dawn with a printed copy of her follow-up article, Manipulation Unmasked, Coercive Control Case Sparks Legal Inquiry into Medical Forgery. Underneath it, a photo of Marcus, being led out of the house in handcuffs. For the first time in months, I felt the weight start to lift. Not gone, but lighter. People think freedom feels like a clean break, like one moment you're trapped, and the next you're finally breathing again. But it isn't like that. It's quieter, slower, messier. After Marcus's arrest, the house was treated like a crime scene for weeks. The police found forged documents, prescription pads, and emails linking him to multiple false insurance claims. Not just mine, but several other women's names, too. He'd been running a quiet scheme for years, all hidden behind the image of a caring partner. He pleaded not guilty, of course. His lawyers claimed I had emotional instability and a history of self-endangering behavior. Hearing those words in court was like being stabbed with echoes of the same gaslighting I'd lived through. But this time, there were witnesses, recordings, *TS, and Naomi's articles had made sure the world was watching. When the judge denied him bail, I didn't cheer. I just exhaled for what felt like the first time in forever. The days after the trial were strange. I stayed with my mother for a while. She apologized over and over, blaming herself for not seeing through his charm. But how could she have known? Marcus had studied me, my weaknesses, my family, my fears. He didn't just manipulate me. He constructed a version of me that even my own mother believed in. I tried to go back to my old routines. Sketching by the window. Drinking coffee at sunrise. But the smallest things would trigger me. The smell of herbal tea, the flicker of fluorescent lights, the sound of a man's voice too close behind me in the grocery store. Jade never left my side. She helped me file restraining orders, change locks, move apartments. Sometimes she'd just sit with me in silence while I drew, not saying anything. Once, she said, "He wanted to erase you. You're writing yourself back in." That sentence became my mantra. A few months later, Naomi published a follow-up piece, this time about the broader issue of medical gaslighting. She quoted my story anonymously, but her words carried weight. When abusers we *P******************** health, they don't just take control of the body, they rewrite reality itself. Reading that line made me cry. Because for so long, I'd been asking myself, why does everyone think I'm sick? And now, finally, I understood. Marcus had needed me to be sick. It gave him purpose. It gave him power. Without my illness, he was just another man exposed for what he truly was, small, terrified, and hollow. I started therapy not long after. The real kind. No forged notes, no sedatives, no gaslighting. My therapist, Dr. Kavanaugh, told me something that stuck. Recovery isn't about proving you were sane. It's about trusting your own mind again. At first, I couldn't. My body flinched at its own instincts. I second-guessed every decision. But little by little, I started reclaiming the small things Marcus had taken. My autonomy, my art, my mornings. I reopened my freelance studio, this time painting under my full name, Elena Morris Studios. The first piece I sold was a watercolor called The Sea Remembers. It showed a woman standing by the shore, her reflection clear and whole, no longer fractured by waves. A few months after the sale, I got an email from someone named Claire, a stranger. "I read about your story. I think my boyfriend is doing something similar. Can you tell me how you got out?" That message broke me, and rebuilt me in the same breath. So I wrote back. I told her everything. Every mistake, every sign I ignored, every moment I doubted myself. I told her to trust her gut, to document, to reach out before it was too late. She replied 2 days later, "You saved me." That was when I realized healing wasn't about going back. It was about helping others find their way out. Naomi's articles eventually sparked a legal review into coercive control cases. A new law passed in our state, one that recognized medical manipulation as a form of domestic abuse. She sent me a copy of the bill when it passed, folded inside a card that read, "You changed more lives than you'll ever know." I keep it on my desk. Sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night, expecting to hear Marcus's voice, that gentle tone dripping with concern. But then I hear only the hum of the city outside, the real world moving on, and I remember that he no longer owns my narrative. My mother's health is improving. She started volunteering at a women's center, helping others who've been deceived by people they trusted. Jade and I still meet for coffee every Friday. We never talk about Marcus anymore, not because we're pretending it didn't happen, but because we've already written him out of the ending. Last week, my therapist asked me what being well means to me now. I thought about it for a long time before answering. It's not about being fine all the time, I said. It's about knowing when something feels wrong, and believing myself when I feel it. She smiled. That's what health really is. I walked home that evening through the same streets that once felt like cages. The sea breeze hit my face, cold and real. For the first time, I didn't feel small or sick or broken. I felt alive, defiantly, quietly alive. And when I got home, I painted something new, a portrait of a woman holding her own reflection, steady and unshaken, surrounded by light. I titled it simply, Well.